Folks, welcome into a brand new episode of Trainwreck Fantasy Football. I'm your host, Wake Jotkins, here with some guy, Steve, and Jordan Rosas. Week 1 of the NFL season is in the books. Next week, we will have a reaction podcast on Monday morning to kind of talk about the week that was. Just wasn't in the cards this week. I was over the great atmosphere, disappointing result. But you know what? That's just the way it goes. We'll announce the special guest we're going to have with us every Monday during our DFS show this Saturday. So stay tuned for that. But for now, we do have week 2 of the NFL season to talk about. We're going to go game by game, talk about all the players you need to know, even the ones you don't need to know about, starting with Thursday Night Football. And let me tell you, there are more players you do not need to know about than ones that you actually do. I'm going to try to do this one quickly. It's an NFC Beast matchup between the Giants and the Washington Football Team. And outside of Antonio Gibson, who you drafted maybe as early as the first round, Saquon Barkley, who could be disappointing, McLaurin, Logan Thomas, Kenny Golladay. Is there anyone at all even worth thinking about starting between these two teams?
I like Sterling Shepard. I think he showed that he could be the legitimate number one receiving option for the Giants last week. He had a huge week, over 100 yards, scored as well. I think Sterling Shepard could be. It looks like he has the most chemistry with Daniel Jones already, and that makes sense because Galladay's a new face, so you have a few games to go through the motions. I would play Sterling Shepard. I think he's a solid flex option this week.
Could be. Jordan, do you find any value in Sterling Shepard this week, like Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a good receiver, and maybe not a great one though. And I think with the issues they're having with their run game, they are going to have to lean on the pass a bit. Mm-hmm. So I think that he's a good candidate to produce. I don't necessarily love him, but if you're a little thin at wide receiver, he's definitely a playable option. One guy that I like this week is Taylor Heinicke. If you're looking for a quarterback, maybe you waited on quarterbacks and you're looking at your guy don't love the matchup. This is a guy who was dancing all over Tampa Bay last year in the playoffs. Didn't get the win, but he did pick up a lot of yardage on the ground.
He's
and
mobile,
if you're playing a fantasy quarterback, we love that kind of yardage.
Mm-hmm.
I gave you Tyrod Taylor last week. I told you if you had Justin Herbert sit him,
credit where it's due. You were right.
Take Tyrod. I think Taylor Heinicke is that guy this week. Again, don't drop anybody huge for him. But if you're not loving your quarterback for this week, take a flyer on Heinicke this week.
Yeah, no, Heinicke's not bad, and Sterling Shepard, he does have a good matchup that Keenan Allen exploited pretty harshly last week against the football team, and he does do a lot of his work in the slot, and slot targets are the most valuable targets in all of fantasy football. So, the Sterling Shepard call, definitely a deep cut, but a good one. But guys like Diami Brown, Darius Slayton, Kyle Rudolph, just nothing worth really even sniffing there.
We'll Unless you're playing DFS Showdown. That's the only lineup I'm putting them in.
Yeah, I'm staying away from DFS. I bet the under tonight. It's 40.5, and I still bet the under. And I bet the football team taking the spread. I don't love much else about this game tonight. Won't even be I'll be watching Big Brother instead of Thursday Night Football tonight. I can't lie. Moving on, Cincinnati at Chicago. The Bears kind of were exactly what we expected them to be. David Montgomery did look better than what I expected to. In week 1, especially against a good Rams defense. David Montgomery, Allen Robinson on the Bears side of the football. Cole Kmet actually is top 10, I believe, in the NFL in targets for tight ends. Actually, I believe he had 7 last week. Came away with 5 or 4 catches or so. So clearly they do want to put an emphasis on getting him the ball. On the Bears side of the football, though, it's hard for me to look past those top 3 options, though. I can't imagine starting anybody else. Even against the bad Bengals defense. I mean, Darnell Mooney could be a fun guy.
Yeah, that's the guy I'd bring up. I could talk myself into Darnell Mooney. I believe he had 7 targets last week, which was second to Robinson. And I think Mooney will get a lot of looks, especially the Bengals have a bad secondary. And I expect this game to be decently high scoring. But once again, you're trusting Andy Dalton and a Matt Nagy offense, and I just don't want to do that. I think the safer play is just Allen Robinson, David Montgomery. Just play him. Don't touch any other Bears.
Yeah, Jordan, Bears side of the football. What do you like? What do you hate?
Yeah, I mean, this game is a little tough because it's so early in the season, and I think that Chicago really underperformed last week while Cincinnati overperformed last week. So it's tough to tell exactly how those matchups are going to work out. I have a feeling that some, kind of third string player is going to go off. I just don't know who that's going to be.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
it
right.
could be number 2 guy like Mooney has a big week. He could also get shut down though. So there's nobody that I feel confident between their ceiling and the risk to really advise you other than just play the normal guys, like you said, Montgomery, Robinson. If you got Jamar Chase, he did really well last week, so I'd keep him in lineups.
Yeah,
we tried telling you.
I'll let
Telling
Steve brag on that one a bit.
Yeah, go for it, Steve. Go off.
This is the whole thing of just not reacting to the preseason or not reacting to what everyone expects, what the targets are going to be,
And
or
not
who's going to be
reacting
the
like Florio.
1 through 3. And the big thing with Jamar Chase is, yes, he sat out a year of football. He was going to be rusty, but we watched what he did in LSU with Burrow. They already had the chemistry. And week 1, he led the team in targets. Jamar Chase, I think, is going to be matchup proof soon. He is, in my mind, one of the best wide receivers in a dynasty format, and I really think that he is the number 1 option for the Bengals. It's not T. Higgins, it's not Tyler Boyd. Yes, they're both solid receivers, but I liked a lot what I saw from Jamar Chase in week 1, and I think he's only going to go up from here as the season goes on.
Actually, one more thing I do want to mention is Joe Mixon really impressed me, and because Henderson.
I got a trade to tell you that I pulled off during the draft about Joe Mixon. Go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, so because Darrell Henderson, who I think is a serviceable RB2 type caliber guy, because he was successful against the Chicago defense, I think that Joe Mixon has a really good chance to really go off. And I was low on him in the draft because I really did not trust the Cincinnati O-line. They made some adjustments. I didn't think it was enough. But like I wrote in my article, they are finding ways to be successful. So, as long as they're being successful, we'll keep playing those hot hands.
Yeah, I love Joe Mixon. And the trade I pulled off, so my friend Eric in one of our home leagues, he loves trading during the drafts. And he moved back 5 spots in the second round, or moved up 5 spots, got DeAndre Hopkins in that spot. And then at the end of the second round, I got Joe Mixon. And then in the late round swaps, I got Darrell Henderson, and he got Leonard Fournette. And I love the way that trade is shaken out already.
Nice.
We were sitting next to each other at the Bills game, and he just kept pointing, hey, look, D-Hop's got 2 touchdowns. Who won the trade? You know what? Wait till the end of the week. Wake won the trade, baby. Wake won the trade. I love Joe Mixon this week. He is, off the field stuff aside, people hate him as a human being sometimes. We're not going to talk about that. He's a fantastic football player. He's a very good running back on a team where there's just going to be so many opportunities for points because of how bad that defense is.
And the biggest thing about Joe Mixon for me, 33 touches in week 1. That is in the territory with those workhorse round 1, early round 1 backs. And maybe Joe Mixon, he may not have 130 rushing yards per week. He had, a couple targets in the receiving game. But Joe Mixon, if he gets close to 30 touches a week, he's a must start every single week, and he already is. But he can jump up into the top 5 running back territory with that kind of workload. 33 touches in week 1. As whoever drafted Joe Mixon, they must love that because there's no Gio Bernard, and P. Ryan's not going to do anything. It's Mixon's backfield. He's going to be the bell cow workhorse back, and we saw that week 1.
Yeah, no, he will be. I was shocked that he wasn't a first-round pick this year, to be completely honest. There's no competition for touches in that backfield. Yeah. Next year, he'll probably be a first-round pick. There will be competition for touches, and he might disappoint as a first-round pick next year, which is a little unfortunate to say. But my 2 cents on the wide receivers here. I mean, Jamar Chase, he embarrassed Bashaud Breeland, and he's not a scrub cornerback. He's not at all. He was on the Chiefs last year, and he was one of their better corners for most of the year. And the Vikings brought him in to kind of revamp that secondary, have him kind of be not a cornerstone piece, but a foundational piece of rebuilding the secondary to get back to what it was. Jamar Chase just embarrassed him sometimes. He doesn't have the best matchup on the field. I think Tyler Boyd does. Again, a slot receiver. Having the best matchup kind of for the second game in a row that we've talked about. So I do like Boyd as well. You're probably not going to have to decide between starting these 3 receivers. Basically, if you have any of them, you're starting them this week as a solid wide receiver 3 at the very worst, in my opinion. Moving forward, Houston Texans and the Cleveland Browns. Jordan, are you going back to Tyrod this week with Houston?
So I'm expecting regression from Tyrod. I think he's startable, but he's the quarterback of the Texans going up against an actual NFL team now. And we saw last week that the Browns, they scored, I think it was 3 straight touchdowns on their first 3 possessions. If they get out of the gates like that, again, we saw a great Tyrod. We saw Tyrod play the best he can be.
We saw him actually taking risks, which is just unfathomable.
Right, but the reason that Josh Allen's the quarterback for the Bills now and not Tyrod, even though he ended the playoff drought, is that he shuts down. You saw what he's capable of, but he's so frustrating because he doesn't always do the things he's capable of. There's going to be times where he doesn't pull the trigger, and I think this is going to be one of those games. Mm-hmm. And so I'm fading him. If you need somebody, he is going to get you something with his legs. But again, I liked him against Jacksonville because I didn't think the Jags could put a lot of points on the board. The Browns can, which means they're going to have to go away from the run. They're going to want to throw the ball. Tyrod doesn't like to turn the ball over. There's going to be short passes. I'm thinking a lot of 3-and-outs. So I don't really love him so much this week.
And, going off of that, moving to the running backs in Houston, we kind of saw exactly who was used for what. It was actually very clear that 2 of them are running backs and 2 of them are pass catching running backs right now, meaning Mark Ingram and Rex Burkhead are kind of, the actual runners sometimes. And then Phillip Lindsay and David Johnson are more, Mark Ingram and Phillip Lindsay are more the traditional running backs. Yeah. David Johnson and Rex Burkhead are catching passes. That being said, I would only touch David Johnson in this backfield this week.
I'm not touching any part of this backfield. I'm not touching any part of the Texans besides probably Brandon Cooks, just because Cooks showed me that he can be the number 1 option. It's just a matter of health. The whole thing with the Texans, they went from playing the Jaguars defense, which I said I think is one of the worst defense, if not the worst defense in football. Yeah. And now you're playing the Browns defense, who, yes, I know they give up a lot of points, but it's the Chiefs. The Chiefs will shred any defense. The Browns defense is a top 5 defense in my mind. They have a great secondary. And it doesn't help that you
gave up the ball because your punter dropped it in the red zone.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, too, is that a lot of those points came late. Yeah. Cleveland was beating the brakes off the Chiefs for that game. And I wrote in my article, if you read it, the Chiefs might be the only team in the league that can orchestrate that kind of fourth quarter comeback. I don't see the Texans pulling that off. So like you said, I'm fading all the backs in the Texans with the Texans, because Mark Ingram, he got 26 touches, I think it was. Yeah. But he averaged 3.2, 3.3 yards per carry. This guy had 26 touches and 85 yards. That's it. That is horrible efficiency. Yeah, those numbers are huge because the Texans were up, but I don't expect them to lead in many games, which means they're going to have to go away from the run. So I would fade every Texans running back this week.
And not only this week, but I think going forward, I think the Texans backfield is going to be one of those backfields where it's just the hot hand each week. I really don't think there's a legitimate top back in this backfield. I think they're just going to switch them in. Whoever they think is doing well that week or is working, that's who they're using. I don't want any of them on my team. I don't want to have any part of them. Like I said, this week, the only guy I like from the Texans is Cooks. Yeah. But even if I could get Cooks out of the lineup, you may have some garbage time potential with Cooks, maybe Amendola. But I just think the Browns rout the Texans. I don't want any part of the Texans this week.
Speaking of running backs, though, I do have to say, if you have Cleveland running backs, lock them in your lineup. I think there's a great chance that both Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb are over 100 yards. Both of them could have 100 yards in a touchdown. I know Wake was high on both of these guys in the draft, so I'll let them go off. But
oh my God, no, you're right.
Get that point in.
I got Kareem Hunt stupid late in so many drafts this year. I'm talking 7th, sometimes 8th round, and people are like, "Oh, he's the number 2 running back." But as I said in the offseason on this show, he's weapon number 2 on that offense. He gets more touches than Jarvis Landry. He gets more touches than OBJ when healthy. He gets more touches than both of their tight ends combined. And they don't have anyone
OBJ's expected to miss this week, too.
He is expected to miss this week, too. So boost up to Jarvis Landry. He did get some design carries. He caught all of his targets last week. Do like him as well. And I wasn't big on him in the draft process, but you know what? Credit to Jarvis Landry. He is going to be a flex valuable wide receiver pretty much every game this year, especially if Odell Beckham Jr. is not playing. But I even kind of like that Anthony Schwartz guy, the rookie that kind of splashed a little bit last week. He had 5 targets, 3 catches, something like that. Yep. He's relatively solid. So if you're in a deep league, 14, 12-person league, and you're struggling for a flex, if you're in a guillotine league and you need someone to plug in, maybe you missed out on all the big guys that you were bidding for, you could do a lot worse than Anthony Schwartz going up against the Texans defense.
And one guy too, especially at a position that's very weak. I don't mind streaming David Njoku this week. He jumped up to the number 2 tight end on the depth chart in snap count, and he was used as their vertical threat with Odell not there. Especially if Odell doesn't play this week, he could have a lot of big play potential because the Texans linebackers not very good. The Texans secondary not very good, and he's used as a vertical threat. Tight ends a wasteland this year. Mm-hmm. He's probably still available in a lot of fantasy leagues. If you need the help, I would definitely look into streaming Njoku against the Texans.
Yeah, and Jordan, you passed it off to the running backs, and I completely passed over them to talk about stupid-ass Jarvis Landry. But, Kareem Hunt, he basically is a running back, to be honest. But, Kareem Hunt, he's got 12 touchdowns in his last 16 games. And, it's just they operate a running back by committee like no one else in the entire NFL, more efficiently than anybody could. Jordan, I'll let you get the last words in here about the Cleveland offense before we move on to the next game.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I know we disagreed a bit when you said that they would finish as top 12 backs, but I absolutely think they have a great chance of doing that this week.
Love that. See, this show is all about us debating with each other so we can have better ideas. And when we debate in real time, that's when good ideas come from. So I love that. Now we're going to go to a team near and dear to Steve's heart. Not the Bills. They'll be the next one. Los Angeles Rams going to Indianapolis. I see this one to be a relatively low-scoring game. I don't really love anyone from Indianapolis myself. Of course, you're going to start Jonathan Taylor. Of course, you're going to maybe start Nyheim Hines. Maybe. But there's, especially with all the guys missing on Indianapolis, Quentin Nelson might be out this game. Steve, I'm sure you're a little more tuned into what's going on for this game since you're a Rams fan. So how are you diagnosing this one for the Colts offense?
I'll look at the Colts first, and the whole thing with the Colts is you have to try to play the receiving core as who's Ramsey going to follow, and I don't really think he's going to follow any of the receivers. I think he's going to stay on his side of the field. That's the whole thing there, right? Pittman didn't really show too much week 1. A lot of it was because Carson Wentz didn't play too great.
Yeah.
If I had to take a chance on one, it would be Pittman. I'm avoiding all Colts receivers, kind of how I've been with the Bears last week. Allen Robinson did not have a great week. Why? He was fixing the Rams secondary. I just think it just seems right as long as the Rams secondary is healthy, because it's not just Jalen Ramsey. Fuller is very good. Darius Williams is very good. Rapp is very good. They have a very good overall secondary. I just want to avoid the opponent's receiving core unless it's a guy who's matchup proof. And breaking news, the Colts don't have anyone who's matchup proof for the receiving core.
Yeah, I know a lot of us were kind of high on Pittman in the draft, especially for dynasty leagues. We're like, take him, but it was all upside. It was all upside because the potential is there, but he has not broken out. Carson Wentz is still going to be banged up, which means they're probably not going to lean on the pass a lot. I have Jonathan Taylor down as somebody I love this week. Yeah. But again, if you drafted Jonathan Taylor, you probably spent a first-round pick on him, so benching him is really probably not even an option for you to begin with. I just think he's probably going to have a big week because David Montgomery did pretty well last week, and David Montgomery I think is a good benchmark back because he's not a great running back, but he's capable of playing great. And I think he's your textbook like kind of average back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Obviously, 1 week's a small sample size, but I will say if you got the Rams D, I would absolutely start him this week. I think
if you drafted him and you're not starting him, what the hell are you doing?
They are going to be fantastic. By proxy, the Colts D, I'm backing off. I know I was not as high on Matt Stafford as a lot of people were, but I will say, I'm happy to admit when I'm wrong. It's still early in the season, but through 1 week, which I said in my article, the Rams look legit.
Did you write an article, Jordan?
Did I write an article?
No, it's a good one, though. He put out his power rankings for after week 1 of the NFL season, and that is a must-read. Go check that out at trainwrecksports.com. Go off, Jordan.
The other people I'm going to talk about is the Rams receivers a little bit. I'm not fading them. I have sort of like a middle tier of like these guys that I'm not really excited either way about. And that's kind of how I feel about the Rams receivers. I talked about in the offseason how I thought Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods are still pretty much interchangeable. And I thought that they were being drafted way too far apart. And we saw that in week 1. Cooper Kupp was getting all the looks. Robert Woods was not getting as much work. He did get a touchdown, which, if you're a Robert Woods owner in fantasy like myself, kind of salvage things for you. But going up against this Colts defense, I think that they might be running the football a bit more. And the other thing too is Van Jefferson's getting involved. Matt Stafford is spreading the ball out more than Jared Goff did. So there's more mouths that are getting fed. So it's not necessarily just Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp anymore. So I would say, especially for this week, I don't think they're going to need to pass the ball quite as much. I'd fade those Rams receivers just a little bit.
Yeah, I think Robert Woods is a good one. I think, he has a very good matchup. I believe he should be seeing a bit of Rock Ya-Sin, who is not the best player in the Colts secondary. So I do like Robert Woods. I mean, Kupp, you're obviously going to start just because he is Cooper Kupp. But I don't know if I would go gold digging past that. Of course, I would do Tyler Higbee because he will be a tight end one at the end of the season. Yeah, he absolutely will be. There's no doubt in my mind. If you drafted him in the 10th or 11th round, like where he was going, you found gold. You really did.
That was one of what I was going to say, Wick. That was one of the best signs from week one is Matt Stafford loves to use the tight end, and he showed that week one with Higbee, and Higbee looked great. And now you have a quarterback who's better under pressure, who's better on the run. I think it's really going to help Higbee's value. But to your point, besides Higbee, Woods, Kupp, I don't want to take a chance on Van Jefferson yet. It's not that I don't like him. He had a great catch, but it was one big play, and I know they're going to swap him to Sean Jackson for owners of either when to plug them in. So right now, I think it's pretty simple for the Rams. You have the two, Kupp and Woods. Kupp, who looked phenomenal week one, and then Higbee is the tight end. But there's no need. If you got Van Jefferson on waivers, that's fine. Keep him on your bench this week.
Yeah, exactly. Moving on, game 5 of this slate. Full PPR, start three, at least one wide receiver. Damian Harris, Devontae Smith, DJ Moore, Elijah Mitchell, Tyson Williams. If I'm going at least one wide receiver, I'm going Devonta Smith. And probably the 3 running backs, to be completely honest with you. I don't know how much I love DJ Moore against the New Orleans secondary.
I think it's easy. I think it's Devonta Smith, DJ Moore, and Tyson Williams. Damian Harris fumbled late last week seal the loss against the Dolphins. What do we know about Bill Belichick when a running back fumbles? Their workload gets decreased dramatically the next couple of weeks. I am benching Damian Harris in all the leagues I have him just because I'm terrified that Belichick's just not going to play him. Devonta Smith looked incredible week one. DJ Moore, he's a guy that, I don't want to say he's matchup proof, but he's someone I want in my lineup almost every single week. And Tyson Williams looked pretty good in week one. I know he had just a couple big runs and the rest was meh, but the Chiefs' run defense isn't very great. And if you expect the Ravens to stay in this game, I don't think Baltimore in week 2 is going to have Murray jump Tyson in terms of workload. So I'm comfortable starting him. Elijah Mitchell, great waiver pickup. I'm going to pump the brakes, though, on I'll talk about that in the 40 minutes.
Yeah, we'll get into Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah, absolutely. Then go ahead, Jordan, real quick.
Yeah, Damian Smith is tough because everything Steve mentioned is accurate.
Damian Harris or Devonta Smith?
Damian Harris.
Okay.
I agree with Devonta Smith. Devonta Smith is the guy that should be starting. If you need at least one receiver, put him in your wide receiver spot. Yeah. That should be set it and forget it. For Damian Harris, I was the lowest on Patriots running backs, but they did trade away Sony Michel, so there's one less big name guy there.
One less lonely girl.
They are playing against the Jets, so there should be plenty of opportunity to run the football. But again, Bill Belichick is very inconsistent, especially with somebody coming off a fumble. It's tough to trust. DJ Moore, I think, is solid. I think he's probably the most consistent of all these guys. Elijah Mitchell we'll get into later because it's tough to get a gauge on that.
And we did have another comment asking about Brandon Ayuk, and we will talk about him when we get to the 49ers as well.
Don't cut him.
Don't cut him, but I'd bench him.
Yeah, don't cut but bench. Yeah. Next up, Bills, Dolphins. Josh Allen revenge game. Josh Allen's pissed off. He's gonna go off, like, on God. Like, don't bench Josh Allen because of what he did in week 1.
No.
I don't know. People are talking about regression after 1 week. He had a very, very similar game to what he did last year in Pittsburgh, and his average depth of target was 25% lower than that game last year too. That's Brian Dable. That's Josh not making the right reads. They'll get better. The offensive line will get better.
It's also important.
Don't worry about the Bills.
Josh barely played in the preseason. Like,
exactly.
There were 2 camps of Bills fans, of people that were like, Josh needs preseason reps. And other people were like, put him in bubble wrap. Don't even let him outside. They don't even want him to see the sun. I don't want him to get a sunburn even. And I was kind of like, let's get the guy get a little bit of reps. I'm kind of a big proponent of, I think you have to earn your preseason time off. I think there were a lot of players that I think were a little too young to be just totally held out of the preseason.
Yeah.
But the other thing too is, a lot of people are saying, "Oh, he looks like 2019 Josh." Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at 2019 Josh's performance against the Dolphins because he generally did pretty well.
Yeah. He owns that city.
Let's
he owns Miami.
Yeah,
even
5
if he
and
takes
1.
a step back, Josh has done pretty well in Miami.
And a step back against Miami is still over 300 yards.
Right, exactly. And if you look back last year, Josh had bad games. He was horrible against the Titans. He got outplayed by the Chiefs twice. Yeah. But he rarely repeats bad performances.
Never. You know what they saw? We saw the press conference earlier, and of course, we're spending more time on the Bills here because we're obviously in Buffalo. They said you don't lose, you learn, and that's the mindset that they're all taking into this week. So you're still starting Josh, you're starting Stephon Diggs, you can probably start Cole Beasley. I would I would say maybe,
targets for 13. Beasley.
Yeah, I would say maybe pump the brakes on Devin Singletary. He could be a flex option. There are better ones out there. I'll say it. Dawson Knox is a streaming tight end at worst this week. He caught all of his targets last week. He looked better. He looked better as a blocker. He looks like he's going to earn more opportunities there. They didn't keep Jacob Hollister for a reason. So more or less that sums up the Bills side of the football. But for the Miami Dolphins,
real quick,
go ahead. Yeah,
Emmanuel Sanders or Gabe Davis? Who would you rather start if you had to?
I would rather start Gabe Davis.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%. It seemed like there was a little. Josh and Emmanuel were a little bit off this week. So I would definitely prefer Sanders over Davis. Davis also has another whole year in the system, and Davis was the lone end zone target in that game for Josh Allen. So I do like him a little bit more.
Davis over Sanders is what you're saying.
Yeah,
Davis over Sanders.
Yeah.
And Cullen's commenting, Davis does have an injury right now. Looks like he will be playing, though. Sanders also came out of that game a little banged up, so they're both kind of in the same boat a little bit.
Now,
Sanders did say he was held out of practice, but he said it was just a vet rest day. So
yeah, exactly. And Gabe Davis was limited in practice, as Cullen, who was on the Crowdless podcast last night, is also commenting in.
And if either one's out, then I would just play the other one. If either one's out, I think even though Miami has a pretty good pass defense, like I said, Josh Allen owns Miami. Bills clearly just want to pass the ball this year. They don't really want to run, kind of like last year. So I think you can get away with being able to start, all three receivers.
Yep.
Now, when Gabe and Emmanuel Sanders are both in there, which I expect them to be, that's when it makes it tougher.
I will say,
Colin, we're not inviting you on. I'm not inviting you on, Colin. I already got you on one show this week. That's your quota. I'm kidding. We'll get you on. He did put up the most points in the Trainwreck League, and I talked a lot of shit to him about it.
So Victory lap after week 1, though, Colin? Come on now, be better.
Yeah, who are you? The Miami Dolphins? Who we will be talking about next.
Actually, I do want to say, I was about to say Myles Gaskin. I was just going to say I would sit every single running back in this game. There's not a single back in this Bills-Dolphins game that I would play this week. The Bills... I don't think there's a single running back that they lean on enough to have fantasy value. And with the Dolphins, I like Gaskin. I think he's right on the verge of potentially creeping into RB2 territory. But against the defense, I just don't see it happening.
Najee didn't do it. Gaskin won't do it either. The only players, there are 2 players on Miami's side of the football that I'm going to be – okay, maybe 3. Will Fuller, because it's his first game. Don't know what to expect. Could be a flex flyer if you need it. I don't love it, but it could be. We saw Levi. He looked not bad, but not good. And he was targeted almost twice as much as any other Bills corner. They'll be targeting him a lot, no matter who's on that side of the field. Trey probably won't be shadowing anyone particular. If he is, he's probably going to shadow Jalen Waddle. Even so, I do like Jalen Waddle this week. He looked fantastic last week against a well-coached New England secondary, even without Stephon Gilmore. I love him this week too. And Mike Gesicki, we all know how he does against the Bills. Even if it's in garbage, he puts up numbers. He does. That's just what happens.
Oh, don't sleep on Devontae Parker though.
I'm gonna sleep on Devontae Parker every fucking. I'm gonna use Devontae Parker as a bed sheet. I'm gonna sleep on him so much.
I will say I might disagree with both you guys because I was the low guy on Gaskin. Don't get me wrong, but I think the Bills get up to a pretty big lead here, and Gaskin is that check down running back. He had 5 targets, 5 receptions in week 1, and we saw from week 1 that Tua still isn't throwing the ball down the field. I don't know why.
Unless he misses his first scheme.
Yeah. But it's just it's a lot of dump offs. I think if the Bills bounce back, which I expect them to do, and be up early, Gaskin could get you 6 to 8 targets. And as a flex option, as a guy who could be the lead back as well, should be, because we didn't really see anything out of any of the Miami backs, so there's no need for him to get jumped right now. I don't like him year long, but this week I don't hate Myles Gaskin to have maybe around like 15 fantasy points.
Yeah. I mean, you're banking on game script, and I mean, game script is what you do have to take into account. It's like, we kind of liked, we all, even me, we all kind of liked DeAndre Swift last week because he is a pass catching back. Figured that the Lions would get down early big. They did. DeAndre Swift lit it up in the passing game and on the ground, actually. So do love that call. We are already at the 30-minute mark, and we have 11 more games to get to. So we're going to go through quick here. Next up, another AFC East matchup. Patriots, New York Jets, and the commenter EJ has a trade that he wants us to comment on. But we'll EJ, if you're still watching, we'll tweet at us on Twitter at TWS Fantasy. We'll talk about it on there so that we can get you so we can talk about that a little bit. But Patriots, Jets, Corey Davis, and that's it for the Jets.
Isn't that it for this game?
Yeah. No. I like Jacoby Myers just a little bit. Just a little bit.
I'll show you my love-hate. Let's see if I can get it here. This is my love.
Yeah.
Or no, this the Pats defense. That's it. That's the only thing in that game that I actually really like. I have Mac Jones as a mid-tier thing.
Yeah, as a guillotine or a streamer if you're desperate.
He wasn't. I don't think that Mac Jones was the reason that New England lost last week.
No, it was Damian Harris.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's why we're not touching anyone in the New England backfield.
But as far as Zach Wilson goes, Belichick is great against rookie quarterbacks. I mentioned it. Wilson wasn't all that great last week. I think he's going to be worse this week. Yeah. Not saying he's going to be horrible for the whole season, but don't touch him this week. The running backs, coming out of the preseason, it was kind of a question, are they really going to be that bad, or is this just kind of the preseason workload? It looks like they're going to be that bad, at least from a fantasy standpoint. I mean, Tevin Coleman is the only one who's close to fantasy relevance. Maybe if they check down to him a lot, he could sneak into flex value, but I just think there's better options out there.
Way better options outside of this game. I don't know the Vegas total. I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's probably around 42.5 or something like that. Yeah.
I think it's like 41, I want to say.
41?
It's low. The only guy I'd play on either team is Corey Davis, just because if the Patriots blow out, you get that garbage time potential. But if this is a low-scoring game, the only way the Jets are moving the ball down the field is through the air because they just 100%. Can't run the ball. And Corey Davis is the clear number one option. The other four guys, Barrios, Mims, Moore, they're just you don't know which one's going to have a good week. I think Corey Davis has shown he is the legitimate number one receiving option. I know there's a lot of speculation going into the year if Corey Davis can become the number one option on this team. He showed it week one. Now, granted, it was late in the game when he had a couple big plays, but they were good catches, and he passed the eye test. He was great on film. That's the only guy I'm playing in this game.
100%. Moving forward, definitely a more exciting game to talk about. San Francisco 49ers and the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts looked good as hell. You're starting him. You are absolutely starting him. No question there. Quarterback on the other side of the ball, Jimmy Garoppolo, probably not starting because he shouldn't have been drafted, and he's not worth streaming because they run the ball with guys like Elijah Mitchell and Jamaica Hasty way more than they're going to pass it with Jimmy Garoppolo. Do either of you guys have a case to make for Jimmy G, or can we move on to Elijah Mitchell?
No, I don't want Jimmy G. Give me Jalen Hurts as the quarterback, and then we'll figure out the rest.
Exactly. And so Elijah, obviously, the big, weird thing last week was Trey Sermon not being active. He will be active this week, probably with the Raheem Mostert injury.
I think you should go trade for Trey Sermon right now. I really do.
No,
I really do.
Yeah. In terms of this week right now, though,
this week I'm not starting any of the Niners running backs because I've seen this story many times before where a running back goes off
every year for the past 5 years.
Exactly. They go off for Kyle Shanahan. Everyone claims this running back week one. Everyone claims the guy who goes off. And then slowly as the year goes on, you see their workload decrease. They invested more draft capital in Trey Sermon. Trey Sermon was raved about through camp. Trey Sermon was dominant in college. And now all of a sudden Elijah Mitchell comes out of nowhere. Now he was great at Louisiana, but I think the 49ers want Trey Sermon to be his number one back. It could have been a wake-up call as a healthy scratch, and it probably would have had a huge role. So my whole thing here is I would just hold off on the Niners running backs. Keep them on your bench. But if someone dropped Trey Sermon, go pick him up right now. You could probably trade for him for real cheap, because I very well could see Trey Sermon emerge as the top back over Mitchell as the weeks go on. For this week, though, I'm not too bullish on Mitchell. I'm just gonna, if I picked him up, just keep him on the bench, see what happens.
I'm gonna go a different direction. I'm gonna say pick up Raheem Mostert and put him on your IR, because I've seen
He's
a
out
lot
for
of
the
people.
year.
He's out for the year.
Is it the year now? Last I heard,
at first it was
season-ending surgery,
and then he announced it on like his Instagram
season-ending
story.
surgery.
Oh, I missed that. Oh shoot! All right, well,
That's why I'm saying
I apologize too.
Wow, no, but you're right though. I
Right.
was searching the waiver wire for Raheem Mostert before that got extended to the end of the season. To be completely honest, so I like where your head's at.
As far as Elijah Mitchell, I would say if you got a bench spot, take it, because you just don't know what's going to happen. But Trey Sermon being a healthy scratch was very alarming to me, especially because they were playing the Lions. Like, if there's any team out there that you're going to expect that you're probably going to be able to run the football in the second half, the Lions, you know, and I think the Eagles, it's going to be tougher to get a lead and be able to really run. So if you have to play one of them, I'd probably lean Elijah Mitchell, because coaching staffs don't do what normal people think they should do. I mean, we'll get into Jacksonville later and like the James Robinson situation. Yeah. But like, he should have had a huge game.
He should have had more than 35% of our running back touches.
He didn't. So Trey Sermon should be the next guy up.
But he won't
necessarily mean that's going to work out that way. So I would probably lean Elijah Mitchell over Trey Sermon just for now, but I wouldn't break the bank to get either of these guys. If you can snag him, go for it, but I don't even know that I'd trade for him.
Running backs on the other side of the ball, Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, Kerryon Johnson's a non-factor. I mean, if you drafted Sanders, start him, I guess. I don't love the matchup. I don't love his talent. But
he actually, I know it was against the Falcons, but he actually looked decent against Atlanta. He was pretty quick with his cuts. They were using him in the receiving game, and he caught his targets, which is something that was a huge concern coming into this year. As long as the Eagles have Sanders as their number one back, I think he's fine to start each week. I really do.
Right. Yeah, I think he's startable, especially this week. One guy I do want to get into is Brandon Ayuk, just because I know we had a question about it.
Yes.
I would bench him. I would absolutely not drop him, because there is now one less weapon in that San Francisco offense. We know that Ayuk is kind of one of those guys that can move all over the field. So that running back hole may not be patched in terms of like the available touches might not all go to Trey Sermon or Elijah Mitchell. Some of that could spill over into plays for Brandon Ayuk. So I would bench him this week, but keep an eye out, because he might get some more work out of this.
And then obviously we'll start Dallas Goedert, we'll start George Kittle. Yeah. The real question maybe comes to the Philadelphia receivers, Devonta Smith, Jalen Reagor. I think Devonta Smith is a lock for your lineup.
I think so. He should be.
But Jalen Reagor, he had a good first, 6 for 40 some yards and a touchdown. Not a bad week again against the Falcons. Do either of you think he's worth throwing out there in your lineup in week 2?
I haven't seen enough yet to have confidence to start Reagor. I would only go with Smith as the receiver for the Eagles. And another thing, too, with the Eagles, a lot of times they like to run with the quarterback. I know Hurts only ran 7 times, but it was effective for 62 yards. He's probably going to run more against San Fran, who's going to rush him a lot better than Atlanta did. And they also use their running backs. They use multiple tight ends. So I think it's fine, just one receiver for the Eagles to be fantasy relevant for now.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, if you're really hurting for somebody, I don't think Reagor is unplayable, but I'm not really in love with him that much.
He might be one of the most talented guys outside the top 40 wide receivers.
It is worth noting, though,
that
the 49ers did lose a corner. So
Jason Verrett is out now,
Yeah, they're going to have to patch up some holes there. So, there might be opportunity, but I don't love Jalen Reagor. I mean, this is a guy that has struggled with drops.
6 for 6, though, week 1, I believe, right?
Week 1, he was good, but he's not been consistent. He's had opportunities to, rise into a bigger role, and he just hasn't risen to that point yet. You know what I mean?
Maybe he's more comfortable being the number 2. Maybe Devonta Smith going to the Eagles helps Reagor now, because he's not having the top corner on him. And you saw Hurts, he had chemistry with both of them week 1. I wouldn't start Reagor this week, but he's definitely someone to keep your eye on as the season goes on.
No, I mean Marvin Jones, John Brown, Mohamed Sanu. We've seen plenty of these guys before that do well in the number 2 slot, but can't quite hack it as a number 1. So that's possible. Time will tell. But I think for now, I would try not to play them if I can avoid it.
Yeah, at least for this week. Next week, I'm not sure what their matchup is, but in anything that's not such a bad matchup of such a good defense, you can play Jalen Reagor as a flex. Not if it's Thursday Night Football, though. Then you want to put him in a regular wide receiver spot so you don't lock up your flex for Sunday. Just saying that again. Big fantasy pet peeve. Moving on, Raiders against the Steelers. I think this is going to be a really low-scoring game. And I think that the Raiders defense is going to have a day similar to what the Bills had against the Steelers, just because the Raiders pass rush can actually hit home and the Bills can't. But where the Raiders lack in the secondary, the pass rush, we talked about it on the cap last night, Colin, Kevin, and I did. The pass rush makes up for bad secondaries. And I think that the Raiders are really going to wreak havoc against the Steelers O-line. The Bills started to, and they just, for whatever reason, it didn't happen. But, Ryan Nassib, they have Max Crosby. They have a lot of good players on that defensive line. So I think it's going to be a long day for Ben. Don't like to play him. I do like taking a shot on the Steelers receivers, though, because of how bad that Raiders secondary is. I mean, Juju has the best matchup on the field against a bad slot cornerback. I believe it's a rookie 5th rounder or something like that. And then Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson are just freakish athletes. Very, very good. Claypool made Trey White look silly sometimes. So, I think if you have them on your team, not talking DFS because you could have all of them on your team for that realistically. But if you drafted one of them, you should feel comfortable with them as like a wide receiver 4 at the very least, I think.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting the Raiders were able to shut down Mark Andrews pretty effectively. But Marquise Brown had a really good night. Yeah. So I would say maybe Chase Claypool is the guy that is most likely to get shut down by the Raiders just because he's sort of the bigger guy, and Raiders seem to be able to handle the bigger body guys. But I don't see them shutting down all 3 of them. But again, this is the same issue that I've talked about with the Pittsburgh receivers since the preseason, is you got 3 guys, and any week probably 1 or 2 of them will go off. But it's tough to bet on all 3 of them. So
yeah. Steve, if you could pick one, who would it be?
Deontay Johnson. It's not close.
Agree. Okay.
It's not close. He was a top 10 receiver the second half of last year. He led the team in targets again week 1. I think he had 10 targets. He was targeted in the red zone. I think Deontay Johnson, his biggest problem was dropping the ball.
And he came down with that catch in the end zone.
And if he fixes that, he has elite route running. He has elite footwork. Everything else is elite about him. It's just he has a case of the drops. But what I will say about the Steelers, that's not the receiving core. If you have a chance to trade for Najee Harris, go do it.
Oh my God, do it.
100% of the running back snaps. Yes, he was stopped against the Bills, but it was kind of how the game was going. Really never had a hole, but he can get involved in the receiving game. He had 100% of the snaps, and this guy is an elite talent. He's not going to run for 45 yards each week. The Raiders allowed 189 yards against the Ravens, and yes, the Ravens are a very tough team to stop with the run.
But I think this is and Latavius Murray.
And Lamar Jackson too. I think this is the Najee Harris, breakout week where if someone's panicking, maybe they had a bad week 1, Najee Harris only 5.9 fantasy points. Go get Najee Harris on the cheap right now, because I think with 100% of the touches in this offense used in the receiving game, he has potential to be a top 10, top 5 back.
Let's turn back the clock a little bit with the Steelers. Okay. Le'Veon Bell, in his prime, was the number 1 back in fantasy. He was the consensus first overall pick for, 2 or 3 seasons?
Yep.
We look at Pittsburgh. You got the same coach, same quarterback in place now. Najee Harris getting 100% of the snaps. He is running the ball. He's getting past the ball. Everything is set up. The Bills' defense is a tough defense. Just like we said, the Steelers are a tough defense when we talked about the Bills. I think a huge bounce back. Najee Harris, 100% of the snaps. I cannot emphasize how huge that is from a fantasy standpoint.
No, and going to the other backfield here, Josh Jacobs, I saw a funny article, and it was a real article that said Josh Jacobs out with parentheses, everything, because he's literally batting like an ankle injury, a knee injury, toe injury. He's got everything going on right now. He even had an illness Monday night that almost stopped him from playing in the game. I don't know if I'm going to say fade Josh Jacobs, because even so, he found the end zone twice. That's just how he's used.
Yeah.
You should be starting him if you drafted him. That's just the way it is. I will say, if you have Kenyon Drake, you're absolutely starting him. Are you kidding me? Forget about what he did on the ground. 6 carries for 11 yards. Yeah, that sucks. But 5 catches for 59 yards. He's their wide receiver 2 in Oakland, basically. You know,
that's a big point too. I think with the receiving game with the Raiders, Derek Carr for the first 3.5 quarters of that game only wanted to throw the ball in Darren Waller's direction. That's all he wanted to. Didn't matter if his triple coverage, didn't matter if his receivers were wide open. But at the end of the game, Bryan Edwards was the reason they got to overtime, and then the reason they kind of ended up winning. He's someone, I don't know if I start him, but he's someone I think about. But with the Steelers, great pass defense, great defense overall. I really don't want anyone on the Raiders besides Waller. But to your point, with Kenyon Drake, it looks like he's getting a lot of the receiving work for the running back, not Josh Jacobs, which is huge for Drake's fantasy value, especially with a check down quarterback like Derek Carr is. I think Kenyon Drake could be the better back for the Raiders this season over Jacobs.
I do agree. Jordan, give us your final thoughts on the Raiders side of the ball.
I've seen Kenyon Drake available surprisingly often in leagues lately. Not that he's available in all leagues, but he's somebody that I think should be pretty much rostered in every league, and he should be
like around 80% ownership. Yeah.
If you're somebody who had Raheem Mostert in your fantasy league, which is somebody that is, a flex guy, you're hoping for RB2 value, you lost him. If you can get Kenyon Drake, I think you've got a seamless transition, as I flub up the word seamless.
That's hilarious.
But I think you can expect almost identical production out of those two guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks like he has been actually one of the most added players on ESPN. He's up to 85% rostered, which makes sense because some people play in weird leagues where you only have to roster or you start 4 or 5 players. Right. So, take that into account when you see those numbers too, I guess. Moving on, NFC South matchup between the Saints and the Panthers. I was all on the Sam Darnold train last week. It paid off if you streamed him. You got around 19 or 20 fantasy points, which is respectable. That's actually exactly what you want from a streaming quarterback. This week, I'm not going to touch him. This will be a down week for him. He didn't go off as much as I would have liked to see as someone that I predicted that he could be a top 15 fantasy quarterback against the Jets. I don't think he's going to do well against the Saints. I would start DJ Moore. Don't start Robbie Anderson. Don't start Terrace Marshall. Obviously, you're starting Christian McCaffrey, but outside of those 2 guys, there's just nothing on the Panthers side of the football that's inspiring this week.
Yeah, I put all the Panthers wide receivers in my mid category, which is I'm not necessarily super low, but I'm not really high on them. If you have them and you need to start them, go ahead. Just don't expect anything. I don't think they're going to break the bank, but I don't think they're going to kill you. The only thing I put that I really love for this game, I mean, obviously Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey, but those you're going to start your top 5 picks. Right. But Saints defense, I don't think that they're going to be quite as dominant as they were last week, but I do think that they're in for another big game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Steve, nothing else on Carolina, but switch over to
I'll keep it short and simple for Carolina. I think DJ Moore is matchup proof now, so I'm going to start him regardless, and CMC. The other 2, Robbie Anderson, Terrace Marshall, I'll just wait and see. Marshall had more targets than Anderson, which was eye-opening from week 1, which was eye-opening, especially since Darnold already has chemistry with Anderson. But on the Saints side of the ball, I think you can start Jameis again. I know the Panthers' defense is better, but I really liked what I saw from Jameis. I think he could be a QB1 this year. And he's going to have more yards than he had in week 1 because of how the game script was. I think he only had 148 passing yards. He's going to have more than I may not have 5 touchdowns, but I'm okay starting Jameis. And another guy that we hyped about in the preseason, we didn't see much of, was Marquez Callaway. Why? He was getting blanketed by Jair Alexander. He's not going to this week. I actually love him as a sneaky flex option this week.
Yeah, he's not. Carolina's not going to do the shadow treatment with someone like J.C. Horn or whoever the hell their second cornerback is. I can't even name him for you. So, I mean, Marquez Callaway's a good option this week. Deontay Harris isn't anything that you want to go for.
He had one deep ball.
No, but Juwan Johnson and Adam Troutman, I guess both are streaming options, and it's weird to say. I mean, when Jameis was in Tampa Bay, he did like using OJ Howard and who the hell was that other tight end that they could
Cameron Brate. Cameron Brate is great. Come on now.
Okay. Well, Juwan Johnson and Adam Okay, man, I was not ready for the Cameron Brate. I did not think that name was coming up on the show today. I need to take a step back for a second.
I will say, if you're taking a step back,
please,
with Jameis, and I can't believe I'm saying this because I hate when everybody uses the Josh Allen comparisons, but Jameis is that odd enough quarterback that might possibly be able to replicate something similar to Josh Allen's progression. Because if we look back to Josh Allen's first year and we take away the hometown bias, this guy's accuracy was terrible. He was throwing interceptions. He was turning the ball over like crazy, but 100%. He had freakish talent. He was a huge playmaker. I saw a stat that said Jameis Winston threw a pass that traveled over 50 yards through the air.
I saw this.
And never in the entire time that Drew Brees was a New Orleans Saint did he ever throw a pass over 50 yards. And that shocked me. I mean, this is a guy who threw for 5,000 yards at a time when there had only been 9 5,000-yard passing seasons in league history. Brees had 5 of them, and he never threw a pass over 50 yards.
Love that.
And now I'm looking at Jameis Winston, and I'm saying, Josh Allen in pretty much one offseason just removed the interceptions as a weakness from his game. So it's unlikely, it's rare, but it is possible now for a 100%. Quarterback to just kind of overnight remove those turnovers from his game. And Winston, as we know, was a huge offensive talent, but the turnovers were an issue. Now, we're not just talking about one off season, though. We didn't see him last season. We saw him learn under Drew Brees. We saw him have a whole year, new system and everything. If he can cut down on these turnovers.
Yeah.
And
I know Meerkat's got to be licking his chops.
You're forgetting the most important thing, Jordan. He's got LASIK. He can see now. Jameis can see. And he's with Sean Payton, who was a match made in heaven. Jameis Winston with Sean Payton's offensive mind. I love Jameis Winston for not only this matchup, but going forward
all
the rest
season
of the year.
long. Yeah, 5 touchdowns. He's on a great pace to be a QB1 by the end of the season.
And I'll say this because Jameis Winston, I was very down on him because when Drew Brees got hurt last year, Winston was on the team. They kept him on the bench. They made Taysom Hill the starter. But if they were doing that because maybe Sean Payton wanted to shield him, wanted to let him develop a bit, and kind of didn't want to rush him out, almost, I don't want to say red-shirting him, but kind of that same idea of, hey, we're maybe breaking you down to build you back up again. You're not quite ready to play, but we still believe in you for the future.
Right.
Now, if we're in that future, okay, now I can start getting behind Jameis. And, credit Meerkat.
Hey.
I know he's out there somewhere.
Too. Give us credit, too.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I mean, you guys like Jameis, but Meerkat's the one who drafted him in our league.
So what? I was looking at him in the same route.
I drafted him in the other league, Jordan. Calm down.
Come on. Oh, man. All right. Moving on. Denver Broncos, Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't like James Robinson this week. He's not going to get the amount of touches he needs to be effective. Denver Broncos have a good defense. We talked about the Broncos defense quite a bit. No one I really love on the Jaguars side of the ball. I mean, Marvin Jones, maybe because Trevor Lawrence is really locked into him. But, I mean, that's a big maybe. I don't like anyone in Jacksonville.
If you can, bench all your Jaguars players. If you're able to bench a guy like Chenault, DJ Chark, Robinson, if you're able to have a decent replacement for them, bench them all. I was praising the Broncos defense all offseason. Week 1, they showed out. I know it was against the Giants, but I think this is an elite pass rush. Von Miller coming back made a huge difference. A great secondary. And Lawrence, he put up numbers, but it was a lot of garbage time at the end against the Texans. The Texans defense. He had 3 picks. What is he going to do against the Broncos in week 2, his second career NFL start? I think it's safe just to bench all the Jaguars players. If one of them goes off, then so be it, but I don't want to see any of them in my lineup.
Jordan, any Jaguars you want to start? No.
Yeah, no, it's bold, but I mean, James Robinson, I said it in the off season. I was worried about him, not because the numbers made sense that he should be a bell cow back, but for whatever reason, this front office doesn't like him. Maybe they learned their lesson. I don't think so. I mean, they drafted a running back in the first round. He got hurt. I mean, that seemed like a sign from the football gods, hey, start James Robinson. And they didn't give – not only did they not give this guy touches, he didn't get a carry for the entire first quarter. Mm-hmm. Now, I can understand game script. Oh, we had to move away from the run. There's no excuse to not run the football in the first quarter.
With James Robinson.
Right.
It's Urban Meyer,
getting
though.
outpaced by
Temper your
Carlos
It's Urban
Hyde.
Meyer. Yeah, Urban Meyer Wiener, my favorite fantasy football
man.
team name that I have. We'll move. You know what? The Broncos side of the football is shockingly more exciting. So
Yeah.
so
I
we'll
will
move
say,
over
by
there.
contrast, though, talking about
Yeah.
running backs, Melvin Gordon, I love for this game.
I don't.
3 different Texans running backs scored
love Gordon,
touchdowns last week against the Jaguars. Melvin Gordon had
Okay,
a
for
great
this game,
target
I
share.
like him. Yeah.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, I'm not saying that he's a superstar going forward, but for this week,
Yeah.
I'm all in on Melvin Gordon. Another guy that I really like. I really like Noah Fant for this week. Jerry Jeudy is out. Cordarrelle Patterson has been
Sad.
recovering. I thought he was going to be a bit more healthy, but he really didn't. He didn't get a lot of work, and I don't know that he's quite healthy enough to assume the number 1 wide receiver reigns. I think a lot of targets are going to go to Noah Fant this week.
Yeah, Noah Fant is
Right.
locked in as in the tight end spot. If you drafted him, I got him in our Trainwreck League in the 13th round, and I was salivating at that, even though I didn't even really like him pre-draft that much, but that was just a crazy value. What I want to say about the Broncos running backs is if it wasn't Jacksonville, I don't know how much I'd want to start either of them. They got the same amount of touches. The exact same. They split touches 50-50, and Melvin Gordon, like 70% of his yards came on 1 touchdown carry. I'm very nervous about them. I think Javonte Williams is the better back, but in matchups like this against the Jaguars, you can absolutely start both of them.
I would start Gordon. I don't know if I'd start Williams. Gordon was also involved a little bit in the passing game with 2 receptions.
More, yeah.
But what I will say for the Broncos, and this is kind of a theme I do throughout the season, Courtland Sutton was a bust the past week. I'm starting him this week against the Jaguars. No one wants to. He had 1 catch for 14 yards. Jeudy out now on IR. Someone needs to step up as the number 1 receiver, not just receiving option, receiver. I don't think it's KJ Hamler. I've seen enough from Tim Patrick to know I don't think he's going to get there. We know Courtland Sutton has potential to be elite. He showed it before the injury. This may have been his, a game coming back after a year off. Just go through the motions a little bit. I think now he has to step up because Jeudy is out. I know we busted last week, 1 catch, 14 yards. I think Courtland Sutton will be Denver's number 1 receiver this year, and I think it starts this week against a cupcake matchup with the Jaguars.
See, I am between you two. I think he will be their number 1 receiver by the end of the year, but I don't think it starts this week. I just don't love the matchup against CJ Henderson. He's not great, but he is a solid cornerback.
Cooks
I really do think
torched him, though.
Cooks torched him, yeah, and I think they really weren't ready for. I think that the Jaguars were not ready for Tyrod Taylor to air it out. I mean, like, why would they be, right? I just feel like maybe that game plan kind of caught them off guard. I can understand wanting to start Sutton. This is just a really bad defense overall he's going against, so like it makes sense. I just worry that he might be seeing the wrong side of that secondary a little too often. Next week, I would probably lock him into a lineup, though. I don't know who they play, but he's the only receiver.
Right?
The Jets, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, so next week, lock him in. He could be a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy next week. But for this week, I'm not so sold.
He's a good trade candidate right now.
I'm
great trade. Buy low on him. Buy low on Courtland Sutton. Great point, Jordan. Moving on next, Minnesota Vikings are at Arizona. This is gonna fun one. This is going to be a really, really, really fun game. I really think this is going to be what we wanted Titans Cardinals to be. I think.
Hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, D-Hop, Kyler Murray, Christian Kirk, even Chase Edmonds, lock them in. James Conner could be a flex in standard. Maybe. Don't really love it though. And AJ Green, I know Jordan, you kind of talked me into him being the wide receiver 2 there, but Kirk and Rondale Moore kind of showed out just than him. So are you still convinced that AJ Green could be a good fantasy asset this year?
I mean, I'm fading on him. He got hurt ahead of schedule.
Had a schedule.
Oh, that's
we're at about like week 6 or 7, and where I expected him to be. He's kind of at that point where I was saying like, all right, drop him and pick up somebody else. Yeah. I think he can still have a game or 2 here and there.
Sure. Yeah.
But now that we're starting to establish a track record of other guys stepping up.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of those guys where if I got him on my fantasy team, he's probably the bottom of my bench at this point.
Yeah,
you know,
I
if I'm
think this
looking at
game
picking
is
up
mm-hmm.
a Kenyon Drake, which hopefully you've done by now, or Elijah Mitchell, if he's still available. AJ Green would have been that guy that I would drop to pick up somebody this week.
Sorry, I had to throw my can away. Yeah, no, 100%. I think this is kind of like the don't overthink it game of the week for me. I mean, you're not going to start Kirk Cousins. You never do. You're going to start Dalvin Cook. You're going to start Justin Jefferson. You're going to start Adam Thielen. That's it on the Vikings side of the ball. I was wrong about Chris Herndon being a streaming option last week. He got one target and he didn't catch it. And then on the Cardinals side, Rondale Moore's a dart throw. Could work out. The Bengals did decimate this defense a little bit last week. So, you could see some of the different Cardinals receivers eat, but nothing more than a flex option for him. I think Christian Kirk could be a wide receiver 3. But those are the only two I really find myself debating.
Yeah, I think this is the classic don't overthink it game because I wrote down like Dalvin Cook in my low column this week just because the Cardinals bottled up Derrick Henry last week. But let's be real, if you got Dalvin Cook, you took him in the top 3. You're not going to.
And he catches passes. So, the Cardinals weren't good against pass catching running backs last year.
Right. And it's like there's talented guys in this game. It's only 1 week into the season. Crazy things happen week 1. Just like Wake said, don't overthink it. Just play your guys and wait for the dust to settle a little bit.
Close this one out, Steve.
I really like he's in for a pretty big week. James Conner, he had 16 carries. It was all late in the game when they were crushing the Titans. I think Edmonds, he got all the receiving work for the backs. And a guy I want to keep my eye on, KJ Osborne, last week for the Vikings. 9 targets, 7 receptions, 76 yards. He looks like a legitimate, number 3 receiver for this team. Yes, Jefferson and Thielen are the studs. They're going to get the bulk of the targets. But he was involved a lot in this offense. And he's someone right now, I'm looking on ESPN, he's owned in 0.9% of leagues. Definitely a guy you could add and stash. If he has another good week against the Cardinals, expect his ownership to go up by about 50%. KJ Osborne, someone I have my eye on, is a DFS play, maybe a streaming option if you need to, but just a bench stash.
Yeah. Oh my God. All right, Zaire Clark. I want to know what league you're in. Who should I start, Elliott or Gibson? Both.
Zeke. I would start both.
I would start Zeke, but where are you in the league that you have to decide between that? Let me know. I'll join next year. Moving on. What game did we just talk about?
I prefer Zeke, but both are.
I'd actually prefer Gibson.
I think we haven't talked about that game yet, have we? No, we talked about the football team. That's a tonight game. That's why you got to know, I guess. But why do you have to start between? I don't know.
Put Gibson in as a running back, and
I would put Gibson in person. I don't know. It's so tight at the top.
Gibson against the Giants.
I hate to be that guy, but I just don't know if I care to answer because I'll never have to make that decision.
Yeah, Zaire Clark, tell me, who are you? Who's in that other spot, or what are some other players here that?
I want to know your format. Let us know
because I don't. I haven't seen. I've yet to see the team where you have the option of those two guys are playing for your flex spot or something.
It's interesting. It's an interesting concept though, like a 6-man league where you actually have to pick between running backs like that. That's an interesting style of league. I might be interested.
Could be a dynasty league too. You had a couple good drafts.
I did a league like that. I did a league like that with a couple friends one time because we were just things got so late. We're like, let's do a 4-man league, and it just came down to. I thought it was going to be stupid because I'm like, everybody's going to have stars. But it really was kind of interesting because you had no room for error.
Right.
If one dude didn't go off, you lost. That was
you have to play matchups big time.
If you started Aaron Rodgers, that's it. You lost.
Yep.
And speaking of matchups, don't know if there's a better one in the league for one offense this week. Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, start every single Buccaneers receiver, and Tom Brady, obviously. Gronk, you're going to start him. The questions come with Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones. I don't want to start either of them, even in this game. As a flex, I can understand it, but Rojo looked bad, and Lenny, he didn't inspire either. He looked better,
It wasn't that Rojo looked bad. He just didn't have an opportunity to look good because he had a classic Rojo fumble, which means Fournette basically had the rest of the work. And they used Gio a little bit on third down here. I love that Fournette got 7 targets. I love that he was used in the receiving game, even with Gio on the team. But you have to play game script here. If you think this game is going to blow out, then I think you can get away with starting either the running backs, because I think if it blows out, even with the Rojo fumble, he'll play late in the game. It could be kind of like the Browns-Texans situation. Not as great, but you could get away with playing both. But don't overthink this. Just play the game script. If you think the Bucs are going to kill the Falcons, then play the Bucs studs. Hope they go off in the first half, first 3 quarters. If you need to play a running back, play a running back. And then for the Falcons, just play their studs. Play Calvin Ridley. Don't touch Matt Ryan. Don't touch Russell Gage. I'm not touching Mike Davis. And then Kyle Pitts is the one I'm on the fence with, just because tight end's so weak, and he did see targets last week.
If you draft him, you're starting him.
But I would play Kyle Pitts as well. Right.
I'm 100% with you, Steve. I mean, Calvin Ridley did eat against the Bucs last year. I had 18 catches for 215 yards and a touchdown in those 2 games. Right. So this might be the other classic don't overthink a game of the week.
And Calvin Ridley could have a lot of garbage time potential too.
Exactly.
He's going to be on the field even if it's a blowout. They'll throw him targets. He'll get his.
Yeah. So Jordan, quick thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I wrote in my hate column all Falcons. I don't want their defense. I don't want their running backs, their quarterbacks, receivers, nothing. But if you got Calvin Ridley, he's inconsistent. So you have to take the good with the bad. It might be a bad week. He didn't score last week, but he's a guy that'll randomly go off, like you said, for 18 catches. He'll have a game where he's got 250 yards and 3 touchdowns, and you're going to be kicking yourself if you benched him that week because of game script. Alternatively, you're going to have some off weeks with him. I'm actually going to go the opposite direction with the Bucs offense, though. I'm kind of fading almost everybody just because I think that this game is so easy that –
well, if it's easy, someone's got to get the points.
But then
someone's still got to get the points, though. If you think it's going to blow out, then they have to get to the point of a blowout, right, Jordan?
Yeah.
So the only way it gets to a blowout is if they have a good game. And we've seen in blowouts before, guys will have like 25 points in the first half. They may not touch the field in the second half, but who cares? They got you 25 points.
And Tom Brady is the kind of guy who he's the player that will score 35 points in the first half just so that he doesn't have to see the field in the second.
Yeah.
Well, here's my thing is that I don't really see Brady come out of games too often. So he's got a really good chance to actually be the number 1 quarterback in fantasy this week. But when it comes to Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, I was very high on Antonio Brown in the draft because I think you're getting similar value from all 3 of these guys. Right. Mike Evans had like 34 yards. I don't think that's going to be consistent. He could go off this week, but I don't think there's that much separation from those guys at the top. Gronk, I think, is going to eat again. So I would absolutely play Gronk if you have him. I'm actually starting 2 tight ends. Gronk's my flex in one of my leagues this week.
I don't hate that. Yeah. Okay.
And I was kicking myself because I really want to start Gronk last week, and I actually considered benching George Kittle for Gronk, and I was like, no, I can't overthink
that would have been wrong process, right result if you did that, to be honest.
Yeah.
But
I think there's going to be a lot of guys that get looks. I don't know that any one person, of the skill position players, has that huge of a week. I think they're going to go down their roster. I think you're going to see like wide receivers 4, 5, and 6 are going to get looks. But in terms of the running game, I would roll with Leonard Fournette. He is the pound the rock type of guy. He may not be good,
if there was one.
But when it's 3rd and 3 with a minute and a half left, no timeouts, and they just need to, punch the ball through so that they can take knees, he's going to be the guy that's on the field. And they could be in that point in time where they just want to run the clock out for half the game.
Yeah.
I think if there's ever a game for Leonard Fournette's, walking 2nd and 7 type of football to be serviceable, this is it.
Yeah, no, I would agree Fournette over Rojo. I don't think we could be further apart on the Bucs receivers, but
same here.
If you got him, you're playing him.
Yeah,
I just don't over salivate just because the matchup is bad. You know what I mean? I don't think that they're.
I've never heard that reasoning before. we'll clip this.
The difference between these two teams is too great. You know what I mean? Like the Bucs are too good offensively, and the Falcons are too bad, not just defensively, but offensively.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
We'll see. I will say I do have another show at 7:00 to get to, so we're going to try to rush through these last games here. Dallas Cowboys at the Chargers. Gallup is out for the season now, which sucks. Or maybe not out for the season, out for 6 weeks or something like that. Regardless, it sucks because I thought he was going to earn a fat paycheck this year. So obviously starting CeeDee Lamb, starting Amari Cooper, starting Dak Prescott, starting Zeke.
Yep.
The question is, the only question on the Cowboys side of the ball is, can you start Tony Pollard in your flex spot? And I think you can, especially in this game.
Against the Chargers, really?
I really, really do. I really, really do. Yeah. No, I mean, it's a similar kind of, above average defense based on, who they've added in the offseason. Asante Samuel is kind of transforming that secondary by himself. They have Derwin James healthy. I like the Chargers defense more than I thought I would this year. But I like it in the same respect as I like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. And so I imagine it's going to be a relatively similar game that we saw on Thursday night last week. I think that and that's without Michael Gallup. They're going to look for other people to catch passes. And Tony Pollard is a much better pass catching running back than Ezekiel Elliott is, or at least than he proved to be in week 1. So I'm not saying to start Tony Pollard, but if you're in a 2 running back, 3 wide receiver, 1 flex kind of league, he's a solid flex option. He could finish this game with 5 or 6 catches.
So let me ask you this then. Tony Pollard or James Robinson?
Tony Pollard.
James Robinson.
I didn't even have to think. I just don't trust Urban Meyer.
I'm not touching. I don't trust Urban Meyer either. I just don't really want to touch Tony Pollard.
I don't blame you.
I'm not too sold on it, and I really don't know if Dak's going to throw 58 times again. And when they run the ball, it's really Zeke is the bell cow back, and Tony Pollard. He gets a few carries here, but he's using the receiving game. I'm not overthinking it. I'm just starting the Dallas studs. CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, both matchup proof. Yeah, maybe sometimes Amari can boom or bust, but we saw what happens when he booms. He's a league winner when he booms. So CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Dak Prescott, Zeke. It's pretty easy for the Cowboys side for me.
All right, Chargers side of Jordan. Give your Cowboys thoughts on that.
I was just going to say those are 2 receivers that you leave them in your starting lineup. You eat the donuts when they come because you're gonna when it's good, it's great.
Yep.
As far as Zeke, I would play him. I think he's due for a bounce back week. It is cause for concern because the game script was favorable to the run for most of the game. It was a close game where you could run the ball. They didn't need to throw the ball in order to stop clock and whatnot. But I have a hard time thinking that Zeke's that washed up already,
But the Buccaneers had the best run defense last year. They showed it again on Thursday night. You're not facing the Buccaneers front 7. We saw what Vita Vea did by himself on Thursday. Yeah, he's really good, and they have 6 other guys who are really good on that front 7. So I'm not overthinking it. I'm not afraid of Zeke. The only play that concerned me was when he bounced outside to score. Didn't really make that cut. He just kind of ran into him. But I'm starting Zeke. I love Zeke this week.
All right, Chargers side of the ball. I mean, you're going to start Eckler, obviously. Thank God he's healthy. Thank God Austin Eckler is healthy and playing right now. I really by saying it. Keenan Allen, obviously. Justin Herbert, of course.
Yep.
Jared Cook, Mike Williams. I mean, how the hell do we feel about those guys? I feel like Mike Williams could be all right this week.
I like Mike Williams. He had 12 targets in week 1, and he had a touchdown. The only thing I want to pump the brakes on with Mike Williams and Cook, Eckler had 0 targets. That's not happening again in week 2. That's
because he wasn't fully healthy.
Yeah. Especially against a bad Dallas Cowboys secondary. I think Justin Herbert could finish as the QB1 this week. Obviously, Keenan Allen's matchup proof. And if you think as highly as I do with Herbert, you're going to start Mike Williams as well.
I did want to say, if you took my advice last week and you benched Justin Herbert for Tyrod Taylor,
it was good advice.
Put Herbert back in your lineup for this week.
110%. Oh man, this is gonna be a fun game. I don't know. I haven't looked at the map for the 4:00 games yet, but I really hope this is one of them that the entire country gets because I would love to watch this one over here on Long Island. Don't touch either defense. Don't stream them.
No.
I mean, if you're on Long Island, you're in Giants territory, so you might get the divisional. Well, Giants and Cowboys are in the same division, so they might give you that.
Oh yeah, no, actually, I should get this game now that you mentioned that. Yeah, thank you. Actually, wow, okay. Titans Seahawks. This is another game. This should be there should be some points in this one. I think we'll see a
I
bounce
hope
back
so.
game from Tannehill. I mean, there's no way Julio gets held to 3 catches 2 weeks in a row. I say, for the Titans offense, Taylor Lewan will not be as bad as he was in week 1. He's not going up against 5-sack Chandler Jones again.
Oh,
Exactly.
not even that. Did you guys see the clip where he got bull rushed by what was it? Which safety? I forget his name.
Buda Baker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Baker bull rushed.
Yeah, the Taylor Lewan's not doing that 2 games in a row. Start your Titans. Start, I'll say Anthony Ferkser, pump the brakes on our Sweet Prince this week. He got like 4 targets, 3 of them. That's what you want in the tight end that you drafted in the 17th round of your draft. Okay, so maybe don't start him this week. Stream someone else. You can drop him. No one's gonna pick him up.
And not to mention, Ferkser was a limited participant in practice on Wednesday.
Yes.
So, maybe he's a late scratch. Who knows? But I'm not overreacting to week 1 with the Titans. Obviously, Derrick Henry, you're starting him. Obviously, Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, you're starting him. Tannehill's where the question lies, but he couldn't play worse than he did week 1. He was awful, and he
had no opportunity to be
he
better.
He had no time to throw. I mean, Chandler Jones owned him week 1. Seahawks don't have a great pass rush, and the Seahawks score, which means the Titans are going to have to score to answer them. I like this game to shoot out, so I'm starting the studs all over the board for both teams.
And Jordan, go ahead. Yeah.
The only thing I really see for the Seahawks side of the ball potentially changing is DK Metcalf gets more of the target share, and Tyler Lockett kind of falls off. This was kind of the odd bad game for Metcalf. I'm not horrible.
He's still at 16, right? 16 PPR points.
That's bad for Metcalf, though. That's the fun part.
Right.
I'll take that.
Tyler Lockett had, what do you have? I think like 9 catches, I want to say.
No, he had 4. He just had two deep balls. Lockett was 4 for 100, I believe, and 2 scores.
All right, maybe I'm missing, but yeah, or 2 scores. Yeah, that's what it was. I don't expect the same production on Tyler Lockett. We talked about this in the preseason that he'll put up similar numbers to DK Metcalf over the course of the season, but they come in bunches. Chris Carson, I was really happy to see. Other than that, though, I think the Seahawks are probably going to give you similar numbers to what they did in week 1. Titans, give them a mulligan on week 1. Don't worry about it. Play your stars, and just let week 1 be in the past. You got a question here. Let's see.
Yeah, before we get to the question, I want to say for the Seahawks, Russ, start him. Lockett, start him. DK, start him. Gerald Everett, stream him. Okay. Oh, and Carson, start him. That's the end of the Seahawks. Rendon is asking here, 10-team PPR Superflex, where can he improve his team? I would say here he's got Christian McCaffrey, Allen, and Kyler Murray. I would say trade one of Allen or Kyler Murray and maybe bolster up
Superflex?
Wait, is it Superflex?
No,
never mind.
No.
Oh, I don't know how much you can better this team.
You pump the brakes and you hold this team. The only guy, maybe Tyler Boyd, because he could be the number 3 in Cincy, but this is a league-winning team.
This is a league-winning team. Brendan, you did a really solid good job. The rest of it's Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon, which is fantastic.
Chase, too.
And Chase Edmonds.
Both
Chases. Will Fuller. No. Brendan, you killed it.
Bro, you absolutely slayed your draft, man.
Don't think of improving a goddamn thing. If you lost week 1, I want to see the team you lost to. Jesus. Moving on. 2 more games left on this slate. And one of them is really fun, and one of them is going to be a bloodbath. We'll do it the fun one first. Sunday Night Football. Kansas City Chiefs at the Ravens. I mean, the Ravens can't play, despite putting up 27 points. I don't know if they can play much worse for the rest of the season. I mean, you're going to start Tyson Williams. You are absolutely starting Tyson Williams. Latavius Murray is worth a flex option just because they have always utilized 2 running backs as far as the wide receivers go. I mean, you got to start Hollywood Brown now. I've been a Hollywood Brown hater, but you got to start him. He was the clear wide receiver 1. Mark Andrews, you're starting him if you drafted him. Lamar Jackson, you're starting him if you drafted him. I think the questions on the Baltimore side of the ball comes at Sammy Watkins.
I would rather start Sammy Watkins than Marquise Brown.
Tell me why.
I would. He got more targets. Okay. I know Marquise Brown had the touchdown, but Watkins actually looked really good. He looked healthy and he looked quick. And I think that Sammy Watkins, I think he could be the number 1. I just think he's built. He's a bigger guy, right? I don't think Marquise Brown can handle that type of number 1 target share receiver workload. I like Watkins over Marquise Brown. I'm not in love with either of them, but I'd start Watkins. But Mark Andrews, I think, is poised to have a pretty good week. Chiefs are not very good at defending the tight end. Browns use both their tight ends pretty effectively in week 1. I think Andrews has a pretty big bounce back week.
They made Njoku look ridiculous. Jordan, how do you feel about the Baltimore side of the football?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to those two receivers, it really comes down to what kind of fantasy player you are. If you like higher floors or higher ceilings. Personally, I like a guy with a higher floor, so I think Marquise Brown is a higher floor. But Sammy Watkins is a guy who can go off for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. I don't see that game too often out of Marquise Brown.
I feel like I view them the opposite, but they're kind of two polarizing receivers just being on the same offense. Because I feel like Marquise Brown's floor is a little lower personally. But to me, that's just because that comes at the lower target share. But that's it. We've only seen it through week 1, so there's really no evidence of that. So that's a conversation that has to continue to go on as the season continues, because it'll be interesting to see who the number 1 receiver in Baltimore is, and if Lamar Jackson can support a true number 1 wide receiver. Right. And I think from what we saw in week 1, he has the potential to. Has some things to work on still, but he's not as bad of a passer as everybody makes him out to me.
So let's say that you have currently Clyde Edwards-Helaire in your flex spot, and you picked up Tyson Williams. Who do you start as your flex?
Clyde,
absolutely.
Clyde.
Wait, no. Who else would be in who? What? Who else is on the team? Like I don't.
It's just a
hypothetical. Who would you rather have?
Picking this week, Clyde or Tyson? Who are you picking? I'm picking Clyde.
I would pick Clyde based on talent and matchup both. But Tyson definitely has the better matchup. Clyde just has a better combination of the two, I think. So.
The reason I like Clyde and my thoughts on the Chiefs is they are somehow an elite offense. They only use Travis Kelce and Clyde. They don't really involve anyone else. Like, I loved McCole Hardman coming into the year, but he didn't really do much. They had Robinson, who didn't do much. Mahomes is going to use Hill and Kelce. They had 22 combined targets in week 1, and then Clyde, he had 3 targets as well, and he had basically all their carries. I like those 3. Tyson Williams, he had that one big, touchdown run for about 35 yards. Murray still had the same amount of carries as him. And guess what, Wake? Like we said all off season, Lamar Jackson had more carries than both of them. Mm-hmm. So I like Clyde just because I think he's the 3rd option in Kansas City with an elite quarterback, where you have Tyson Williams Is he the 3rd option in Baltimore? I don't know, because Lamar I consider the number 1 option outside of him passing, and then Mark Andrews, you have Sammy Watkins, Marquise Brown. I think Clyde, you're going to have more of a security blanket for touches.
And James, those are Steve's thoughts on CEH, and I tend to agree. I was very high on Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming into the season. He was good in limited action last year, not great. I thought he would build on it. We didn't really see him build on it in week 1 so much, but it's very early in the season. That Chiefs offensive line is a brand new offensive line. They're one of the few teams in the NFL that aren't returning almost all 5 starters on the offensive line. So maybe give it time. If you have him on your team, don't sell him. He's going to get better as the season rolls along here a little bit. He
may not be the most talented back in the world, but I think he's the number 3 receiving option for the Chiefs after Hill and Kelce, and he's the number 1 running back in a very good offense.
Yeah, I was going to say he's the lead back in a Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid offense. And
he's going to have chances to score a lot.
His floor is flex value every single week, and there are very few running backs you can say that about. Jordan, you haven't talked much in this section about the Chiefs, but that might just be because there's not much else to say, right?
Right.
Yeah, I agree. The Chiefs are kind of different. I mean, Edwards-Helaire is sort of the least effective running back in the Chiefs' current era, I guess, Reid and Mahomes.
Yeah.
But I do think, like you said it best, he may not have the highest ceiling, but I think his floor is flex play every week. And I liked him this year to outperform his draft status. I didn't like him last year. I thought he was way overdrafted. A lot of people said, "Oh, he's going to be the number 1 running back in fantasy." This is a rookie going. Let's pump the brakes a little bit.
Yeah.
But I do think he's a flex play. Tyson Williams, I guess there's more upside just because of the unknown factor. But the other thing to consider too is Latavius Murray was pretty much neck and neck with him, and Murray had been on the roster for like 5 minutes.
Have I done my victory of saying Latavius Murray would sign with the Baltimore Ravens and play in week 1 and score a touchdown? Have I done my victory lap yet?
You can do it right now. Go ahead.
Okay. Yep, I'm just going to do a little. All right, I'm good. I did my, that's I'm gonna do that victory lap every time I'm right about something like that. I didn't hear anything you guys said, so please tell me you didn't say anything stupid about me. Moving on, Detroit Lions, Green Bay Packers, Monday Night Football. Man, we don't get. I mean, like for every great primetime game, we get a really shitty one.
Yeah,
Sucks.
Yeah.
It just sucks.
We got two.
Let me show. What's the worst thing about this game? That the Lions are in it, or that this could be a competitive game?
It's the fact that it could be a competitive game.
It's not. I'll tell you right now, it is not going to be.
DeAndre Swift could make this a competitive game on his own. The
He could
Packers'
make
run defense is terrible.
Yeah.
Awful.
He could get garbage time, but you're telling me after putting up 3 points and getting blown out by the Saints, Aaron Rodgers under the lights in Monday night is not going to stomp on the team that he's been stomping on his entire career. I love all the Packers studs this week: Rodgers, Jones, Adams. The other receivers in Green Bay, I don't know who to trust. Scantling had the second most targets with 7, but he's awful. I actually like Amari Rodgers when he got his 2 targets. I think he's a deep stash to think about.
They were the most beautiful 2 targets I've ever seen in my life.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It was in garbage time, but he's competing with Cobb, Scantling, who just didn't look good. But I have blowout written all over it. So I think you can get away with Swift. I think you could get away with maybe Jamal Williams in the receiving game if you expect it to blow out. Other than that, for the Lions, though, I mean,
I'm predicting this game to go like 42-20.
I'll tell you one dude that if you have the chance to get him, if he's on waivers or whatnot, because he might be, this guy could really swing some times, and that is Mason Crosby. I think this guy is going to absolutely go off in the kicker spot. He could approach 20 fantasy points.
We're talking kickers.
No, he can't because it's only extra points.
It's only going to be touchdowns.
It's only extra points.
They might score 20 touchdowns.
They're not going to score every single possession.
They really might.
Do you want to call me crazy here, Wick? Potential garbage time stream Jared Goff. Potentially.
I was just about to bring up Jared Goff because
I think this game blows out, and I don't think he's gonna get benched because it's Jared Goff. They're not gonna throw anyone else in there. I think Jared Goff is just gonna do.
Wow, still their backup.
Well, that Jared Goff's going to do what he did against the Niners. It was not a one-possession football game against the 49ers. They were getting crushed. They had to, claw their way back to make the score look respectable. And you know what Jared Goff did when they were trailing? He just dumped it off to the running backs. And it worked because the Niners were playing prevent defense. Their running backs had 20 combined targets. Jared Goff threw for over 330 yards. I think the Packers defense is not as good as the Niners, and I think the Packers are going to crush the Lions early on. So I think Jared Goff is a stream option.
Could be. Getting a few questions coming in here. Noah's wondering Gronk or Fant this week. I would say Fant because it'll be more competitive, and Fant will probably just see the field more, and it's just as good of a matchup.
I don't hate it. I like Gronk too. The Buccaneers or Brady's playing the Falcons. You know what happens when Brady plays the Falcons. He always thinks about it. Mm-hmm. So I think Gronk will have I think they're both fine starts. I would lean Gronk just because I'm not too thrilled about Teddy Bridgewater and the Broncos offense as a whole, even though they have a great matchup, but either was a fine start.
All right. Jordan, how do you do this?
I would take Gronk, but depending on your team, you might
you could do both
in the flex spot.
There's actually room to do 2 tight ends on that team.
Because here's the thing with Gronk, a lot of people will say,
he actually gave us his options at flex. Actually, so let's do that. Marquise Brown, Josh Jacobs, Javonte Williams at flex.
Oh, I would go 2 tight ends. I think I would go 2 tight ends.
Especially with the Jerry Jeudy injury, I would absolutely Noah, grow a pair. Go 2 tight ends. Go 2 tight ends, please.
Let us
know how it works out.
I don't hate Marquise Brown in the flex, though. I really don't.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Chiefs are going to score a lot. The Ravens going to have to. And
Noah, if I'm telling you, if 2 tight ends works, you'll never forget it. So just, you know what? If you went 1-0, go for 2 tight ends. Really, I do like Marquise Brown
tight ends before. I'm not afraid of 2 tight end sets.
Hell
And
yeah,
this
Noah.
is-
Hell
it's
yeah,
not-
Noah.
This
Oh
is
my
not
God.
a this is
I'm
not a
about to be
crazy
late for
thought
my
here.
other show because I'm having fun with Noah. We got another question. All the questions are coming in as soon as I have to go. Jeez, thanks,
Okay, here we
guys.
go.
Hex, he's trading Ridley, Pitts, and Henderson for Waller and Antonio Brown. Does he go through with it? That's.
I would not.
I don't
I wouldn't
know.
do
I
it.
mean,
I
think-
actually like Pitts as the year goes on. I think he's going to be a pretty big part of that. But you are trading two guys who are on the same team, and you're getting
Yes.
a matchup-proof
Yes.
player who is elite at a bad position in Darren Waller. And Antonio Brown, who he looked like old Antonio Brown
he looks
Thursday
like he's
night.
going to be the Bucks' #1 wide receiver.
I
not even
I don't
kidding.
hate this deal. I really don't. I
like it.
I don't
I'm
like
going
it.
as far
Here's
as
my
say I
thing.
like it.
Here's my thing with this deal. Antonio Brown, I said that he's as talented as the other guys. But you're trading for Antonio Brown and Darren Waller at their absolute ceilings right now. I would wait another week, and you might be able to
I
get
don't think
another piece.
Waller. We know what Waller is. I don't think this is like
No,
Waller
yeah,
is
we know.
an elite
Waller's
tight end.
a 50
Even though he
burger
went
guy.
off week one, we've seen enough 2-year sample size of Waller to
No,
know
he's-
he is a stud.
He's great, but you're going to get a lot of fans. I don't know how good everybody is in Heck 666 league, but you'll get a lot of fantasy players that, if Waller has a down week or something like that,
Right.
they're more likely to let him go. Whereas
the-
when he was as electric as he was, I think that's going to drive the cost
Okay.
up. And in terms of Antonio Brown, there's a chance that he could very reasonably regress. I think Mike
Yes.
Evans is not going to have 34 yards again. You wait a little
I
bit.
think he might.
I would wait and try to make this. I would wait a week on this trade. I would wait a week on this trade.
The biggest reason I like the deal is because you're trading two guys on the same team away,
Exactly.
and it's part of a bad team, the Falcons, who their offense isn't going to be as bad as it was against Philly, but you're trading two guys away on that team, and you're getting two guys on two separate teams who I think are both very good and matchup-proof players.
Mhm.
If you could get Henderson out of the deal and do a 2-for-2, yes, that's better. I'm fine with this deal. Just because I don't want to have to start two Falcons every week. No one wants to do that.
Let me put it this way. If you wait 2 weeks, because remember, Calvin Ridley had like 51 yards, no touchdowns last week.
Yeah, but
He's going in a game. He's going in a game where they're probably going to be throwing a lot, especially in garbage time. So Ridley could have a reasonably big game. If you wait a week, you can probably do the same trade, but you don't have to give up Henderson.
Would you rather have
I will
Waller or Ridley in a vacuum? Waller or Calvin Ridley this year? I'd rather have Darren Waller. Would you rather have Antonio Brown or Daryl Henderson and Kyle Pitts in a vacuum? I'd rather have Antonio Brown.
The way I see it, he's
That's why I
getting
do
a
the
set
deal.
it and forget it tight end and a set it and forget it wide receiver.
Yes.
Two guys that you can put it in your lineup no matter what. And I have 15 minutes before my other show, and I have not eaten dinner yet. And I have to send the invite for StreamYard in 5 minutes. So Noah is saying, final comment here for the show, and I love that all these comments are coming in. Keep them coming for next week, Saturday morning as well, when we do our DFS show Saturday morning at whatever the hell time we do it. We haven't decided yet. I'll let you know.
See, full PPR league though. That's the thing is that Antonio
Exactly.
Brown
Full
gets a lot of. He gets a lot.
Oh no! This is for the dual tight end.
This is the
for
tight
the
ends.
dual tight end guy.
Oh yeah. Okay.
That makes it even better. I mean, full PPR.
Do it, and please tweet at us at TWS Fantasy and let us know how that matchup goes, because I'm really, really looking forward to see how that goes. I've done dual tight ends a few times. When it works out, it feels really, really good. Hex, you're welcome for the advice, and thank you for subscribing. Everybody else who joined,
Appreciate it.
Please subscribe as well. You guys are why we do this show, so thank you so much for tuning in. But I have another show that's an hour long to do in 15 minutes, so please let Wake go eat dinner. For myself, Jordan Rosas, some guy Steve, thank you from everyone at Trainwreck Sports, Outlet Liquor, and Picasso's. Good